Welcome to the Cheating Diaries channel. I woke up to the blaring sound of the hotel's alarm clock, but the bed next to me was empty. A wave of panic washed over me as I reached out, my hand meeting only cool, empty sheets. Jessica, my wife, was nowhere to be found. Next to the alarm clock, on a small note with her elegant handwriting, were the words, "Gone for a walk, don't worry." My mind raced. We had planned this luxurious Hawaiian getaway to reignite the spark in our marriage, a last-ditch effort to bring us back to where we used to be. But now, waking up to an empty bed and a cryptic note, I felt a sinking dread in my stomach. I swung my legs off the bed and rubbed my face, trying to shake off the haze of sleep. It was unlike Jessica to leave so abruptly without any further explanation. A million thoughts rushed through my head. Had something happened? Was she in trouble? Or more troubling, was she simply unhappy with our vacation? I pulled on some clothes and decided to check around the resort. The sprawling property was a paradise of lush greenery and sparkling blue waters, and it was hard to believe that anything could be amiss in such a picturesque setting. But I knew better. My concern for Jessica had morphed into a gnawing anxiety. As I wandered through the resort, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The sun was high in the sky, and couples lounged by the pool, laughing and enjoying their time. I spotted Jessica's wide-brimmed hat on a lounge chair, and my heart skipped a beat. She had been here recently, but where had she gone? I approached the hotel concierge, my voice shaky as I inquired about Jessica. "Have you seen my wife? She went for a walk and I can't seem to find her." The concierge, a friendly woman with a practiced smile, nodded sympathetically. "I'm sure she's fine. It's a large resort, and people sometimes get lost in their own little corners of paradise. Let me check if she left any messages at the front desk." While she made the call, I paced restlessly, trying to keep my mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. What if she had met someone and decided to spend time with them instead of me? The thought was unbearable, but it lingered in the back of my mind. The concierge returned with no new information, only reassurance that she would notify me if anything changed. I thanked her and returned to the room, feeling more unsettled than ever. As I walked back, I couldn't shake the growing realization that this trip might not turn out the way I had hoped. I tried calling Jessica's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, trying to keep my voice calm and collected. "Hey Jess, it's me, just checking in. Give me a call when you get this. I'm getting a bit worried." I spent the next few hours in a state of uneasy anticipation. The resort's serenity only heightened my anxiety as I waited for Jessica to return. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, and the idyllic surroundings seemed to mock my mounting fears. Little did I know, the peaceful setting was about to become the backdrop for a whirlwind of emotions and revelations I could never have anticipated. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the resort, my anxiety had morphed into frustration. Jessica still hadn't returned, and her phone continued to go straight to voicemail. I decided to make another round of the resort, hoping to find some clue about her whereabouts. As I walked past the pool area, the bustling atmosphere contrasted sharply with my inner turmoil. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. It was then that I spotted her, a vision of elegance and grace, laughing and chatting with a tall, striking man who looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine. Jessica seemed completely at ease, her eyes sparkling with a genuine joy that I hadn't seen in a long time. The man, whose name I later learned was Alex, was effortlessly charming, his laughter ringing out as he leaned closer to her. They seemed to be engrossed in a lively conversation, and I couldn't help but notice the way she looked at him. There was a spark in her eyes that was both unfamiliar and unsettling. I approached the pool area, trying to keep my presence inconspicuous as I observed them. Alex had a magnetic presence, with his tousled hair and easy smile. They were clearly enjoying each other's company, and it was painfully evident that this wasn't just a casual interaction. I made a mental note of their interactions, the way Alex's hand brushed against Jessica's as he handed her a drink, and how she seemed to lean in just a bit closer whenever he spoke. My heart sank as I realized that this was no ordinary walk she had taken. As the evening progressed, I watched them from a distance, unable to tear my eyes away from their increasingly intimate interaction. They eventually stood up from their chairs, and I followed them discreetly, my heart racing. They walked toward a more secluded part of the resort, away from the lively crowd. I found a spot behind a cluster of palm trees and watched as Jessica and Alex continued their conversation, their body language growing more relaxed and familiar. Alex seemed to be sharing a story, and Jessica was hanging on every word, her laughter ringing out like a melodic chime. At one point, he gently touched her arm, and she didn't pull away. A sinking feeling settled in my chest. It was clear that their connection went beyond mere friendship. I could sense an undeniable chemistry between them, one that seemed to have ignited into something deeper. I was torn between confronting them and retreating to process what I had seen. Eventually, they disappeared into the resort's restaurant for dinner, their figures fading into the dimly lit entrance. I stood there for a few moments longer, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and betrayal. Jessica's absence had been more than just a casual stroll. It had led her to an alluring new acquaintance who had clearly captivated her attention. I knew I needed to talk to Jessica about what I had witnessed, but the thought of confronting her with this, of facing the reality that our relationship might be unraveling, was overwhelming. The resort's idyllic setting had suddenly become a backdrop for my worst fears, and I felt utterly powerless to change the course of events that seemed to be unfolding before me. The night was thick with tension as I returned to our room, my mind reeling from the events I had witnessed. The luxurious suite, with its ocean view and lavish furnishings, felt strangely cold and unwelcoming. I paced the floor, my thoughts a chaotic storm of suspicion and hurt. Jessica returned well past midnight, her face flushed with a mixture of exhaustion and something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, or perhaps a lingering thrill. I pretended to be asleep, my back turned to her as she slipped into bed. Her soft voice broke the silence. "Michael, are you awake?" I kept my back turned, trying to control the tremor in my voice. "I'm here. I'm sorry I was out so late. I lost track of time." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw you earlier with Alex. You seemed close." There was a pause, and then Jessica shifted in bed, turning toward me. I could feel her gaze, even though I didn't turn to meet it. "Michael, Jessica, what's going on?" I cut her off, turning to face her. "I saw how you two were together. It didn't look like just a friendly chat." Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something. Defensiveness, maybe. "It's not what you think. Alex is just someone I connected with. It's not serious." "Not serious?" My voice cracked. "Then why did it look so intimate? Why did you seem so at ease with him?" Jessica sat up, her expression a mix of frustration and sadness. "Michael, it's complicated. I didn't mean for it to get this way. I was just enjoying his company." My heart ached as I listened. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence was right in front of me. "Jessica, we came here to reconnect. I thought this was our chance to fix things, not to drift apart." "I know," she said softly, "but sometimes things don't go as planned. Alex is different. He's been a good friend to me, and maybe I've let things get a little too close." I tried to process her words, but the hurt was overwhelming. "So, what does this mean for us? Are you saying you're not happy with me?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "It's not that I'm not happy with you, Michael. It's just, I've been feeling disconnected for a while, and meeting Alex made me realize how much I miss feeling valued and understood." The admission stung, but I knew she was speaking from her heart. "So what now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she replied, her voice trembling. "I need to figure things out. I don't want to hurt you, but I also can't ignore what I'm feeling." I nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. The vacation that was supposed to be a fresh start had become a turning point, exposing the cracks in our relationship. I felt lost, unsure of how to move forward, or if there was even a path to reconciliation. Jessica reached out and touched my hand, her gesture both comforting and heartbreaking. "Michael, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I pulled my hand away gently. "I need some time to think. I need to understand what's happening and what this means for us." Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, trying to figure things out." As she turned away, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The once welcoming resort now felt like a prison, trapping me in a reality I wasn't prepared to face. The night was long, and sleep eluded me as I grappled with the pain and uncertainty of what lay ahead. The next morning, the resort seemed to have taken on a new, almost eerie calm. I was up early, the sun casting long shadows across the beach as I walked along the shore, trying to clear my mind. The tranquil sound of the waves was a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. Around noon, I decided to seek some advice and support. My good friend David, who was staying at a nearby resort, had been in touch with me via text. I hadn't mentioned the issues with Jessica, but his messages were filled with concern. I reached out to him, asking if we could meet for lunch. David arrived at the resort's main lobby shortly before noon. We greeted each other with a firm handshake and a quick hug. His expression was a mix of curiosity and concern, and I could tell he sensed that something was wrong. We found a quiet table at the resort's beachfront restaurant, where the gentle sea breeze provided a soothing backdrop to our conversation. David looked at me with a knowing smile as we settled into our seats. "So, what's going on, man?" he asked, his voice low and sympathetic. "You sounded a bit off in your text." I hesitated, trying to find the right words. "It's Jessica. We've been having some issues and things took a turn for the worse. She's been spending a lot of time with someone she met here, and I'm starting to think there might be more to it than just friendship." David's brow furrowed in concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. You want to talk about it?" I took a deep breath and recounted the events of the past few days, the mysterious note, the late-night encounter with Alex, and the conversation with Jessica. David listened intently, his expression shifting from surprise to deep concern. "It sounds like things are pretty complicated," David said after I finished. "But it's important to remember that relationships can be challenging, especially when you're far from home and dealing with stress." "I know," I replied, feeling the weight of his words. "But seeing Jessica so close to someone else has been really hard. I'm not sure if there's a way to fix things or if it's even worth trying." David nodded thoughtfully. "It's never easy when you're dealing with this kind of situation, but you need to ask yourself what you really want. Are you willing to fight for your marriage, or do you think it's time to let go?" His question was like a splash of cold water. I had been so focused on the pain and confusion that I hadn't taken a moment to consider what I truly wanted. Before I could respond, the waiter arrived with our lunch, and we took a break from the heavy conversation. As we ate, I felt a slight sense of relief just from talking things through with someone who cared. After lunch, David offered to help me sort out my feelings. "If you want, I can be around to support you while you figure things out. Sometimes just having someone to talk to makes a big difference." I appreciated his offer and agreed. "Thanks, David. It means a lot to have you here." We spent the rest of the day hanging out at the resort's pool, and David's presence provided a welcome distraction. We joked and reminisced about old times, and I began to feel a bit of the weight lift off my shoulders. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knew I had some decisions to make. David's support had given me a bit of clarity, and I realized that no matter what the outcome, I needed to confront the reality of my situation with Jessica and decide what was best for both of us. The resort, which had initially seemed like a paradise, was now a place of reflection and realization. As I watched the sunset with David, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation about the future. The following morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of determination. The conversation with David had given me some clarity, and I knew that I needed to address the situation with Jessica head-on. However, I also needed to gather more information to understand the full extent of what was going on. After a quick breakfast, I decided to take a walk around the resort to clear my head and devise a plan. I knew I couldn't just sit back and wait for things to resolve themselves. If I wanted to understand what was truly happening, I needed to be proactive. As I strolled through the lush tropical grounds, my mind raced with different scenarios. Should I confront Jessica directly, or should I gather more evidence before taking any action? The latter seemed more prudent. I needed to understand the nature of her relationship with Alex and how deeply it had affected her. My first step was to subtly observe their interactions. I planned to spend the day at the pool, where I had previously seen them together, and see if I could gather more information without drawing attention to myself. I arrived at the poolside around noon, settling into a lounge chair with a good vantage point. The sun was already high in the sky, and the area was bustling with vacationers enjoying their time. I kept my sunglasses on, partly to shield my eyes from the glaring sun, and partly to remain inconspicuous. Hours passed as I scanned the area, looking for any sign of Jessica and Alex. Finally, around mid-afternoon, they appeared together, walking hand in hand as they made their way to a private cabana. Jessica looked relaxed and happy, and Alex was, as always, effortlessly charming. They settled into the cabana, and I watched as they talked, laughed, and shared what appeared to be an intimate conversation. I noted how Alex occasionally touched Jessica's arm or leaned in close, their interactions laden with a familiarity that was both painful and revealing. As the day wore on, I took careful note of their schedule. Jessica and Alex seemed to spend most of their time together, moving from the pool to various spots around the resort. It was clear that their connection was more than just a fleeting attraction. It had developed into something more substantial. At one point, Jessica and Alex took a stroll along the beach. I followed at a discreet distance, careful to remain hidden behind the dunes and palm trees. Their conversation was too far away for me to hear clearly, but their body language spoke volumes. They walked close together, and I could see the ease and affection in their movements. After they returned to the resort, I decided it was time to take a different approach. I needed to gather more concrete information. I called David and asked if he could join me for dinner at the resort's restaurant. His presence had been a comfort, and I hoped his insights could help me make sense of everything. David arrived at the restaurant just before our reservation. We greeted each other with a nod, and I could tell he was ready to offer his support. As we sat down and ordered our meals, I filled him in on the latest developments. "It's clear that Jessica and Alex have a strong connection," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm worried about what this means for us." David listened attentively. "It sounds like they've become quite close. Do you think there's a chance to talk to Jessica about this, or do you need more evidence?" I thought for a moment. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I also need to understand the full scope of what's happening. Maybe I should try to speak to Alex directly, or find out more about his intentions. David nodded thoughtfully. "That might be a good idea. It could give you more clarity about where everyone stands. Just be careful, though. Emotions are high right now." As we finished our dinner, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The plan was to gather more information and try to get a clearer picture of Jessica and Alex's relationship. It was important to approach the situation with care, but I needed to confront the reality of what was happening. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the day's events. The resort, which had once seemed like a dream getaway, had become a battleground for my emotions and a test of my resolve. I knew that whatever happened next would require courage and honesty. I was determined to get to the bottom of the situation, no matter how difficult it might be. The next morning, I woke up with a clear objective. I needed to speak directly with Alex to understand his intentions and gain more insight into the nature of his relationship with Jessica. It wasn't a conversation I was looking forward to, but it was necessary for me to get a full picture of what was going on. I spent the morning quietly, trying to gather my thoughts and prepare for the conversation. I had decided to approach Alex directly and ask him about his relationship with Jessica. The goal wasn't to confront him aggressively, but to get honest answers and hopefully gain some clarity. Around midday, I made my way to the resort's outdoor lounge area, where I knew Alex liked to spend his time. It was a sophisticated setting, with comfortable chairs and a beautiful view of the ocean. I spotted Alex sitting alone reading a book. He looked up as I approached, his face lighting up with a friendly smile. "Hey Alex," I said, trying to sound casual. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" "Of course, Michael," he replied, setting his book aside. "What's up?" I took a seat across from him, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. "I wanted to talk to you about Jessica." Alex's smile faltered slightly, and he leaned back in his chair, adopting a more neutral expression. "Okay, what's on your mind?" "I've noticed that you and Jessica have become quite close over the past few days," I began carefully, "and I need to understand what's going on. It's clear that there's a strong connection between you two, and I want to hear your side of the story." Alex's demeanor remained calm, but I could sense a hint of tension in his posture. "Jessica and I have definitely spent a lot of time together. We clicked pretty quickly, and I think we both enjoy each other's company." "I can see that," I said, trying to keep my tone measured. "But I'm concerned about the implications of your relationship. Jessica and I are here to work on our marriage, and it seems like things have developed between you two that go beyond friendship." Alex sighed and looked out at the ocean, collecting his thoughts. Look, Michael, I never intended to cause any problems. I genuinely enjoy spending time with Jessica, and I think she feels the same way. But I also respect that you and she are married. So, what's your intention? I pressed gently. Are you looking for something serious with her, or is this just a vacation fling? Alex met my gaze, his expression earnest. I've been honest with Jessica about my feelings. I like her a lot, but I understand that she's in a committed relationship with you. I'm not trying to interfere or make things more complicated. I just wanted to be upfront with her. I took a deep breath, processing his words. I appreciate your honesty. This isn't easy for me, but I needed to hear your perspective. I want to make sure that Jessica's feelings are respected and that there's no misunderstanding. Of course, Alex said, nodding. I respect that. I think you should talk to Jessica about how you're feeling. It's important for both of you to communicate openly. With that, the conversation drew to a close. I thanked Alex for his time and got up to leave. As I walked away, I felt a sense of resolve. Alex had been candid, and while his intentions seemed respectful, it was clear that the situation was complicated. I spent the rest of the day reflecting on our conversation and preparing for my next step, talking to Jessica. I knew that I needed to have an open and honest discussion with her about our relationship, her feelings for Alex, and where we both stood moving forward. As evening approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The resort, which had initially been a place of relaxation, had become a stage for some of the most challenging conversations of my life. I hoped that this next conversation with Jessica would bring the clarity and resolution I so desperately needed. By the time evening rolled around, I felt like a bundle of nerves. The conversation with Alex provided some insight, but it was clear that the real discussion needed to happen with Jessica. I had spent the day mentally preparing myself, but nothing could quite brace me for the conversation that lay ahead. I found Jessica at the resort's bar, where she was sitting alone nursing a drink. The soft lighting cast a warm glow over her, but I could tell she was lost in thought. I approached her slowly, trying to gauge her mood. "Hey, Jess," I said, taking a seat next to her. "Mind if we talk for a bit?" Jessica looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "Sure, Michael. What's up?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before speaking. "I've had a conversation with Alex today. I wanted to get his perspective on what's going on between you two." Her eyes widened slightly, and she took a sip of her drink to steady herself. "And what did he say?" "He told me that he likes you a lot, and that he's been honest about his feelings," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "He also mentioned that he respects our relationship and doesn't want to interfere." Jessica's face flushed with a mix of guilt and relief. "Michael, I didn't want this to be so complicated. I've been trying to figure out my own feelings, and I didn't mean to hurt you." I nodded, feeling a pang of sadness. "I understand that things can get complicated, but what I need to know now is where we stand. You and I came here to work on our marriage, and it feels like we've drifted apart." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been feeling disconnected for a while now, and meeting Alex made me realize how much I've been missing. It's not just about him, it's about how I've been feeling about us." I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and I felt a deep ache in my chest. "So what are you saying, Jess? Do you want to be with Alex, or do you want to try to fix what we have?" Jessica took a deep breath, clearly struggling with her emotions. "I don't know what the future holds. I care about Alex, but I also care about you. I never meant for things to get this complicated. I need to figure out what I really want and what's best for both of us." Her words were honest, but they left me with more questions than answers. It feels like we're at a crossroads. If we're going to try to fix our marriage, we need to be completely honest with each other and work on rebuilding what we've lost. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I want to make things right, Michael. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to ignore my own feelings. I need to figure out what's best for us and for me." I took her hand gently, trying to offer some comfort. "Let's take some time to think things over and figure out what we both want. We need to be honest about our feelings and be willing to work through this together." Jessica squeezed my hand, her gaze filled with a mix of hope and sorrow. "I agree. Let's take the time we need to understand each other and decide what's next." As we sat together in silence, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The conversation had been difficult, but it was a crucial step toward understanding where we stood. The resort, once a symbol of our attempt to rekindle our relationship, had become a place of painful revelations and difficult decisions. The night stretched on, and while the future remained uncertain, I felt a glimmer of hope that with honesty and effort, we could find a way forward. For now, all we could do was take it one step at a time and hope that in the end, we could find our way back to each other. The following day, the air around the resort felt heavy with unresolved tension. Jessica and I had agreed to take some time to process our feelings and thoughts, but the uncertainty loomed over us like a dark cloud. I had hoped that a little distance would help clear our minds, but the day's events were about to take an unexpected turn. After breakfast, I decided to take a walk along the beach to clear my head. The waves lapped gently at the shore, and the salty breeze provided a temporary respite from the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. As I walked, I tried to focus on the beauty of the surroundings, but my thoughts kept returning to the conversation with Jessica and the future of our relationship. Mid-morning, I noticed a group of people gathered near the beach, participating in a beach volleyball game. Among them was Alex, looking relaxed and engaged in the game. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to join in. The distraction of physical activity seemed like a good way to take my mind off things. As I approached, Alex spotted me and gave me a friendly wave. "Hey, Michael, come join us." I forced a smile and joined the game, trying to blend in and focus on the fun. It was a good distraction, and for a brief while, I was able to push aside my worries and immerse myself in the game. During a break, while the group was taking a rest and grabbing drinks, I found a moment to talk to Alex privately. "Alex, can we chat for a second?" "Sure," he replied, setting his drink aside. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I've been thinking a lot about our situation, and I just wanted to ask if you'd be open to having a more in-depth conversation. It's important for me to understand where things stand." Alex nodded, looking serious. "I understand. Let's find a quiet spot and talk." We walked a short distance away from the group, finding a secluded area by the edge of the beach. The sounds of the waves provided a soothing backdrop as we sat down on a bench. "I've been thinking about what you said the other day," I began, "and I want to make sure that I'm approaching this situation with clarity. I don't want to make any assumptions." Alex listened attentively. "I appreciate that. I want to be clear that my intention has never been to come between you and Jessica. I genuinely like her, but I also respect the fact that she's in a committed relationship with you." "That's important to hear," I said, feeling a bit of relief. "But I also need to know what your feelings are. If this is more than just a vacation fling for you, then I need to know." Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "To be honest, I'm really fond of Jessica. We've had some meaningful conversations, and I feel a connection with her, but I'm also aware of the boundaries and the fact that she's married. I don't want to overstep." Just then, a familiar figure approached us. Jessica. She looked apprehensive but determined. "Michael, can we talk?" I looked at Alex, who gave a subtle nod of understanding. "Of course," I said, rising to my feet. "Let's have this conversation together." Jessica and I walked a little further away from Alex, the tension between us palpable. She took a deep breath before speaking. "Michael, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I realize that I need to be honest with both you and Alex about where I stand." Alex joined us shortly after, standing a few feet away, giving us the space we needed. Jessica continued, "I care about Alex, but I also care deeply about you. I've realized that our relationship needs to be the priority, and I need to make a choice." My heart pounded as I listened to her words. "What are you saying, Jess?" "I want to work on our marriage," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "I've been feeling lost and disconnected, but I realize that I want to fix things with you. I don't want to lose what we have." There was a moment of silence as I processed her words. I looked over at Alex, who was standing quietly, his expression a mix of disappointment and understanding. "Thank you for being honest," I said to Jessica. "I appreciate that you want to work on our relationship. It's going to be a difficult journey, but I'm willing to try if you are." Jessica nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I am. I want us to rebuild what we've lost." Alex stepped forward, extending his hand to me. "Michael, I want to apologize if I've caused any additional pain. I respect your decision and wish you both the best." I shook his hand, feeling a mix of gratitude and sadness. "Thank you, Alex. I appreciate your understanding." With that, the three of us parted ways. Jessica and I returned to our resort room, where we spent the afternoon talking openly and honestly about our feelings, our future, and the steps we needed to take to rebuild our marriage. It was clear that the road ahead would be challenging, but we both felt a renewed commitment to working through our issues. As the sun set over the resort, casting a warm glow over the ocean, I felt a glimmer of hope. The situation was far from resolved, but the conversations and decisions made that day had set us on a path toward understanding and healing. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in days, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. The days following our conversation with Alex were a whirlwind of emotions. Jessica and I had agreed to focus on our relationship, but we knew that rebuilding trust and intimacy would require time and effort. Our conversations had been raw and honest, and while there was a sense of relief in our renewed commitment, the journey ahead was still fraught with challenges. We decided to take a day off from the resort's usual activities to spend some quality time together. Our goal was to reconnect and start mending the fractures in our relationship. We chose to explore a nearby scenic spot, a hidden cove that the resort's concierge had recommended. It seemed like the perfect setting for us to reflect and begin the healing process. As we set out for the cove, the atmosphere between us was tentative but hopeful. The drive was filled with a mixture of small talk and moments of introspection. I could tell that Jessica was just as eager as I was to make things right, but there was also an underlying tension as we faced the reality of our situation. The cove was secluded and serene, with crystal-clear water and lush greenery surrounding it. We arrived in the late morning and spent some time simply walking along the shore, taking in the natural beauty. The peaceful environment provided a much-needed backdrop for our conversation. We found a quiet spot under a large palm tree, where we spread out a blanket and sat down. Jessica and I looked at each other, both of us feeling the weight of our recent decisions and the future we were trying to rebuild. "Michael," Jessica began, her voice soft and sincere, "I know that words alone can't fix everything. I want you to know that I'm committed to working on our marriage and rebuilding the trust that's been broken." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "I appreciate that, Jess. I want to work on things too, but I also know that it's going to take time. We need to be patient with each other and with ourselves." Jessica reached out and took my hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. "I want to be open and honest with you. I've realized how much I've missed the connection we used to have. I want us to start fresh and work on rebuilding that bond." We spent the next few hours talking about our feelings, our hopes for the future, and the steps we needed to take to rebuild our relationship. We both acknowledged that there would be challenges ahead, but we were committed to facing them together. As the afternoon wore on, we decided to take a swim in the cove's warm, inviting waters. The swim was refreshing and symbolic of our desire to move forward. We joked and played in the water, allowing ourselves to relax and enjoy each other's company. Afterward, we enjoyed a simple picnic lunch we had packed, savoring the tranquility of the cove. It felt like a small but significant step toward repairing our relationship. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the cove, Jessica and I sat quietly, holding hands and reflecting on the day. The experience had brought us closer together and reminded us of the reasons we fell in love in the first place. "Thank you for today," Jessica said, her voice filled with gratitude. "It's been a really meaningful day for me." I squeezed her hand gently. "I'm glad we had this time together. It feels like a positive step in the right direction." As we made our way back to the resort, we both felt a sense of renewed hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we had taken an important step toward rebuilding our relationship. The trust and intimacy we once shared were fragile, but we were committed to nurturing them and moving forward together. That evening, as we returned to our room, the resort felt different, less like a place of turmoil, and more like a place of possibility. We knew that the journey to rebuild our trust would take time and effort, but for the first time in days, we felt like we were on the right path. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on the progress we had made and the challenges that still lay ahead. The future was still uncertain, but I felt hopeful that with honesty, patience, and a renewed commitment to each other, we could navigate the complexities of our relationship and find our way back to a stronger, more meaningful connection. The days that followed our day at the Cove were a mix of continued effort and gradual healing. Jessica and I were committed to working on our relationship, and while it was clear that rebuilding trust and intimacy would take time, we felt encouraged by the progress we were making. Our interactions were more open and genuine, and we began to rediscover the small joys and connections that had once brought us together. We participated in various activities around the resort, enjoying simple pleasures like hiking, dining together, and taking in the beautiful surroundings. Each shared experience helped to reinforce our commitment to one another. On our final evening at the resort, we decided to have a quiet dinner at a secluded spot overlooking the ocean. The restaurant had a reputation for its breathtaking sunsets, and we hoped that it would provide a fitting backdrop for reflecting on our journey and looking ahead to the future. As we arrived at the restaurant, we were greeted by a warm, intimate setting. The soft glow of candles and the gentle sound of the waves created a romantic atmosphere. We took our seats at a table with a panoramic view of the ocean, and the sunset began to paint the sky with hues of orange and pink. Jessica looked at me with a soft smile, her eyes reflecting a mix of contentment and gratitude. "Michael, I want to thank you for being willing to work through everything with me. This trip has been challenging, but it's also been a time of growth for us." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I feel the same way. It hasn't been easy, but I'm grateful for the effort we've both put in. I believe we've taken some important steps toward rebuilding our relationship." As we enjoyed our meal, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. We discussed the lessons we had learned during our time at the resort and how we plan to apply them to our lives moving forward. It was clear that we both valued our relationship and were committed to nurturing it. The evening was filled with moments of laughter, meaningful conversation, and a renewed sense of connection. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a final golden glow over the ocean, we felt a sense of closure and optimism. After dinner, we took a leisurely stroll along the beach hand in hand. The gentle sound of the waves and the cool evening breeze provided a peaceful backdrop for our reflections. We paused at a spot where we had previously shared our thoughts and emotions, and I looked at Jessica with a sense of hope and determination. "I know we've had our challenges," I said, "but I believe in us. I believe that with continued effort and honesty, we can build something even stronger than before." Jessica smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "I believe that too, Michael. I'm committed to working on our relationship and making sure we create a future that we both want." As we walked back to the resort, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The resort had been a place of both difficulty and discovery, and while the journey had been far from easy, it had brought us closer together and helped us rediscover the strength of our bond. That night, as we prepared to leave the resort and return to our everyday lives, I felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The challenges we had faced had strengthened our commitment to each other, and I was optimistic about the future. As we said our goodbyes to the resort, I knew that our journey was far from over. Rebuilding trust and intimacy would continue to be a process, but we had taken significant steps toward a new beginning. With honesty, patience, and love, we were ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that we had the strength and commitment to overcome any obstacles together. The resort had been a place of both trial and transformation, and as we left, I felt a deep sense of peace and readiness for the new chapter in our lives. It was a new beginning for us, one filled with hope, understanding, and a renewed commitment to building a future together. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos.